Something brought you here. Not curiosity exactly, something closer to recognition. A pull you felt before your mind had time to explain it. And that small moment, that pause before the scroll, matters more than it might seem. Major shifts rarely announce themselves with noise. They don't begin with chaos or dramatic events. They begin with interruption, a break in the usual pattern, a feeling that resists being categorized, something pulling your attention toward a specific direction at a specific moment, and you can't quite articulate why. If this message found you right now, that timing is worth paying attention to. Not in the vague sense people usually mean when they say everything happens for a reason. Something more precise than that. There are moments when your internal state begins reorganizing before anything external has visibly moved. Moments where your attention starts gravitating towards certain ideas, certain messages, certain timings, because something underneath your life has already started shifting. Something that began moving before your conscious mind caught up to it. Notice your breathing for a moment. Don't control it or deepen it. Just notice where it naturally sits, whether it feels high in the chest, settled in the stomach, or somewhere strangely still. Your body usually recognizes transition before your mind does. It's already processing something your thoughts haven't fully named yet. And lately, something has felt different, hasn't it? Not dramatically different. Not in a way that's easy to explain to someone else. But there's been a quality to recent days that's hard to shake, like the atmosphere before a storm, except the storm isn't meteorological. It's internal. A sense that something is approaching, that the current version of reality, the one you've been living inside, cannot continue exactly as it has. You may have noticed yourself thinking differently about the future lately, or pulling away from things that used to occupy your attention without you even deciding to. Certain conversations feel emptier. Certain routines feel disconnected from whatever it is you actually are. You may be waking up with a strange pressure in your chest, your system anticipating something before your conscious mind has identified what it is. This is what happens before major life shifts. There's almost always a signaling phase first, a period where awareness begins reorganizing before reality visibly moves. Most people don't recognize it for what it is. They explain it away, distract themselves through it, force old patterns to continue even while their system is trying to cross into something new. They treat the signal as noise. But you're here, and that's not incidental. The anxiousness you may have been feeling lately, that low-level alertness that doesn't quite resolve, may not be anxiety in the way you've understood it before. It may be energetic anticipation, your system sensing movement before your conscious mind understands what's moving. Because when reality is about to reorganize, the body often interprets expansion as uncertainty at first. Especially if you've spent significant time expecting disappointment, living in emotional survival mode, or bracing yourself habitually against outcomes that never went the way you hoped. The nervous system becomes accustomed to tension. So when change finally approaches, even welcome change, even the kind of change you've been privately asking for, the system still reacts with alertness. It reads unfamiliar movement as potential threat, because that's what it was trained to do. But alertness doesn't always signal danger. Sometimes it signals arrival. Notice your shoulders right now. Are they lifted and held, or have they begun to drop as you've been listening? The body responds differently when something resonates as true, even before the logical mind has processed why. Your physiology mirrors your internal state with remarkable accuracy, and right now it's telling you something. There's a feeling that's been quietly building, a feeling that something is closing and something else is beginning. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking. Something more grounded than that. A threshold becoming real. A version of yourself becoming obsolete and another version becoming possible. This is usually when signs start appearing more frequently. Repeated numbers in unlikely places. Strange timing in conversations. Dreams that carry unusual weight. Thinking of someone moments before they reach out. Being pulled repeatedly towards certain ideas you can't fully explain. Losing interest in old identities, old ways of spending time, old sources of satisfaction that no longer satisfy. People call these coincidences, but sometimes they're synchronization points, moments where internal movement starts echoing outward through the external world, where what's shifting inside begins showing up in what surrounds you. If this message found you during one of those moments, the next few days may carry more significance than an ordinary stretch of time. Here's something important about why certain messages land with impact at certain moments. A message heard too early passes through without leaving a mark. The exact same message, received at the right internal moment, can redirect the entire trajectory of a life. The content didn't change. The timing did, and timing changes everything. There are periods when awareness becomes unusually sensitive just before reality shifts. Almost like your system begins scanning for confirmation before your conscious mind fully understands what's happening. In those periods, certain things begin finding you differently. Not just videos or messages, conversations, symbols, ideas, unexpected encounters. Things arrive with a precision that doesn't feel random. Your breathing may feel slightly more present now than when this began. More interior. When recognition starts happening, attention naturally draws inward. The outside noise loses some of its pull. You may have noticed that recently, things that used to distract you don't quite work anymore. You scroll and nothing fully holds you. You're in conversations, but part of you remains somewhere else. Your routines feel strangely temporary, like your mind already knows they won't remain exactly as they are. That's one of the clearest signals before a major transition. The old reality starts feeling emotionally thinner before the new one arrives to replace it. And during that thinning, messages appear with unusual precision. Not because the universe is broadcasting constantly and you're finally listening, but because your perception has become aligned enough to notice what was always there. That's the more accurate explanation. Most people assume awakening means acquiring something new, a new mindset, a new identity, new beliefs. But often it's the opposite. It's the removal of distortion, the dissolving of mental noise that was keeping you disconnected from your own deeper awareness. As that noise weakens, timing starts feeling different. You arrive somewhere exactly when you needed to. You encounter something just as you were ready for it. The precision isn't manufactured. It's the result of your internal signal becoming cleaner. There are certain moments in a person's life when internal readiness for change reaches a point where reality begins reorganizing around it. Not fully externally, not yet, subtly first. Almost invisibly. You start feeling pulled away from environments that no longer match where you're going. Pulled toward ideas you can't fully justify. Pulled toward people who reflect the version of you that's trying to emerge rather than the version that's dissolving. At the same time, old emotional structures begin losing their stability. People sometimes disappear from your life just before a breakthrough. Habits that used to satisfy you stop working. You can feel emotionally exhausted and strangely hopeful at the same time, which is a disorienting combination if you don't understand what it means. Your system is reorganizing, and reorganization always feels confusing before it feels clear. Have the last few weeks felt emotionally unusual? Not necessarily difficult, just different. Like something beneath the surface has been quietly building pressure. The way the atmosphere changes before heavy rain. You can feel the pressure gathering before a single drop falls. That's the sensation many people carry in the period directly before a major shift. Not chaos. Pressure. Internal pressure before release. Here's what most people misunderstand about this phase. The signal appears before the event. Your awareness begins shifting first. Your emotional patterns begin shifting first. Your attention begins shifting first. Reality moves second. That's why these periods feel so strange. You're emotionally standing between two versions of your life simultaneously. One reality is ending internally, while the next one hasn't fully materialized externally. You're on the bridge between them. And if this message found you on that bridge, you are much closer to the other side than you think. Most people expect transformation to feel loud, emotional, explosive, unmistakable. But some of the largest shifts in a person's life begin in silence. A strange kind of stillness where things that normally stimulate you suddenly lose their intensity. Conversations feel slower. Goals that used to carry emotional charge stop feeling urgent. Your reactions begin changing without any conscious effort to change them. That can feel unsettling. When the old version of reality starts loosening its grip, there's often a temporary quiet before the next phase locks in. A pause, not emptiness, but transition holding still for a moment before movement resumes. You may have noticed yourself spending more time inside your own thoughts lately, but in a different way than before. Less anxious, more observational, like part of you has been watching your own life from a slight distance, watching patterns repeat, watching emotional cycles complete themselves, watching certain people reveal themselves more clearly than they did before. And alongside that watching, there's been a feeling that something is ending. You can't always name exactly what, but the feeling is real. Nature operates this way. Before a storm arrives, the atmosphere changes first. The pressure shifts. The air feels different. Animals respond before anything visible has happened. Human awareness carries that same intelligence. Your system feels transition before your mind understands it. That's why this phase can feel emotionally confusing. One part of you senses expansion, another part still fears loss. So you end up in this strange middle state where nothing feels fully stable. But instability isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's reorganization. If you've been feeling emotionally detached lately, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Sometimes detachment appears when your energy is no longer synchronized with the reality you're about to outgrow. Your presence is already partially somewhere else, somewhere the external world hasn't caught up to yet. The stillness you feel is the pause between versions of yourself. One identity is weakening, another hasn't fully formed. And the closer the shift gets, the quieter things can become internally, right before movement starts. Before major shifts arrive, there are signs that appear in the final stretch, and some of them are more subtle than people expect. The first is disruption, not dramatic disruption, but small interruptions in your normal emotional rhythm. Routines that usually comfort you suddenly don't. Sleep patterns shift. You wake at unusual hours. Time feels strange, either moving too quickly or painfully slowly. Moments that would normally feel ordinary begin carrying unexpected emotional weight. Your nervous system is preparing for something, and preparation sometimes feels like discomfort before it feels like readiness. The second sign is heightened sensitivity to energy. Certain environments start draining you faster than they used to. Certain people feel heavier without you being able to explain why. And then, in completely random moments, something feels deeply significant for no logical reason. A sentence, a song, a fragment of a conversation, a memory that surfaces at an unexpected moment. That's your awareness becoming more receptive. During transition, the usual filters weaken. More gets through. Reality starts speaking in patterns rather than direct statements. The third sign is a shift in how you think about movement in your life. Less focused on chasing, more drawn towards something that feels like alignment. Not because you've given up on what you want, because something inside you has recognized that forcing no longer works the way it used to. The version of you that survived through pressure, through overthinking, through emotional control and constant preparation, that version is becoming less available to you. And the version that moves differently is starting to take its place. The fourth sign, and the one people almost always misread, stillness. Right before reality changes, there is often a period where nothing seems to be happening externally. Everything looks the same, no obvious movement. And that's usually the exact moment people panic and conclude that nothing is working, that they were wrong, that change isn't coming. What they can't see is that reality reorganizes invisibly before it reorganizes visibly. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Pressure builds silently before the release happens. The apparent pause is the final phase of preparation, not evidence that nothing is moving. Many of you are inside that pressure phase right now. the final stretch before movement begins. That's why you've been feeling emotionally suspended, positioned between two versions of your life, waiting for something you can feel coming but can't yet see arriving. Before reality changes externally, your internal structure has to stop matching the old version first. And that process is disorienting while it's happening. You may suddenly outgrow conversations you used to enjoy. You may feel emotionally distant around people you still genuinely care about. You can feel this happening before you can explain it. The old patterns are losing their hold. The old narratives the mind used to tell itself are loosening. Your intuition is sharpening. You're sensing people's intentions faster, recognizing misalignment sooner, feeling when something is off before you can articulate why. Reality becomes harder to fake during this phase because your awareness is no longer operating within the old pattern. And certain things begin falling apart without you forcing them to. Not because something is going wrong, because some structures genuinely cannot continue into the next phase with you. They belong to the version you're leaving behind. Endings during this period aren't punishment. They're preparation. They're the slingshot pulling back before release. The tension isn't failure, it's positioning. You may have mistaken positioning for punishment recently, interpreted the delay as rejection, read the emotional distance as evidence that something was wrong, that change wasn't actually coming, that you were fooling yourself. But what if reality has been reorganizing you this entire time? What if this strange pause, this internal pressure, this persistent feeling that something significant is approaching, what if all of that has been the final adjustment before movement? The shift may already be happening. Not tomorrow, not at some future point, now beneath the surface quietly. And once internal reorganization reaches a certain depth, external reality has no choice but to begin reflecting it. Many transformations don't collapse because the timing was wrong. They collapse because of interference. Constant checking, constant doubting, constantly trying to force movement before reality is fully ready to open. The person trying to rush the process ends up disrupting the very thing they're trying to accelerate. Your breathing has continued this entire time without you managing it. Still moving, still sustaining you, without requiring your constant attention or control. The deepest forms of alignment work the same way. They stop feeling like effort. They stop requiring force. They become participation in something already moving, something that was already in motion before you recognized it. That's the lesson this phase carries. Not how to control reality, how to stop interrupting it. The tension lives in the need to know exactly when things will happen, exactly how they'll unfold, exactly what the outcome will look like before any of it has arrived. But transformation doesn't move through certainty. It moves through openness, through remaining connected to the direction of movement without constantly stepping out of it to analyze whether it's working yet. And that's genuinely difficult if you've spent significant time surviving through control, through overthinking, through preparing yourself emotionally for disappointment before it arrives, through bracing yourself as a default posture. That version of you kept you safe during a particular chapter, but it cannot fully enter the next one while gripping the current reality that tightly. The grip itself is what's creating friction. Alignment isn't tension. It's coherence, a state where your thoughts, your nervous system, your attention, and your actions stop working against each other. And when people finally stop forcing, reality often begins moving with unusual speed. Not because they executed the right technique, but because resistance stopped distorting their perception. Opportunities that were already present become visible. Intuition sharpens. Decisions simplify. Movement becomes cleaner. The biggest sign that true alignment is taking hold is that you stop monitoring the universe every few minutes to check whether it has forgotten about you. You stop treating every delay as confirmation that nothing is happening. You stop needing constant external proof in order to remain connected to where you're going. That's real alignment, not performed positivity layered over internal panic. but genuine internal openness. The kind where you no longer need certainty delivered in advance in order to keep moving. Exhaustion itself, at a certain point, teaches surrender. Not giving up, releasing interference. The slingshot doesn't need to force the launch. Once enough tension has built, release happens on its own. And your life may be entering that exact threshold now. The point where pressure becomes movement. There comes a moment in this kind of transition where reality stops feeling like something you're waiting on and starts feeling like something you're already inside. That's the crossing point. It doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly, directly, and it doesn't reverse itself. Something subtle happens when the mind stops resisting transition. The nervous system begins settling into the future before the external world has fully arranged itself to reflect that future. The body relaxes into what's coming before it has arrived. And you may be reaching that exact point right now. The edge of the old identity, the edge of the old emotional cycle, the edge of the version of you that kept waiting for permission to move. The old reactions are losing their full grip. The old fears are becoming less convincing. Even the suffering that's been present lately feels different, less personal, less permanent. More like watching the final echoes of a version of yourself that is slowly dissolving, rather than experiencing those echoes as the total truth of who you are. The next version of your life won't be built through force. It will be built through coherence, through the moment your internal world stops contradicting the future you're moving toward. Reality responds with unusual power when your thoughts, your nervous system, your attention, and your actions stop pulling in opposite directions. When that coherence arrives, movement accelerates, not because you finally earned it, but because resistance stopped delaying it. Pay attention in the coming days. Not obsessively, quietly. Watch what begins shifting in your immediate environment. Watch what conversations appear and what conversations fall away. Watch what leaves without drama and what arrives without announcement. Watch what your intuition keeps pulling you toward, even when the logical case for it isn't fully clear yet. The next chapter of your life doesn't enter loudly. It enters through recognition first. A quiet knowing that something has changed, followed by external reality, gradually arranging itself around what already shifted internally. And if this message found you at the exact moment it seems to have, then the process didn't begin when you pressed play. It began before that. You were already in motion. This was simply the moment you recognized it,